Go. When it says go, we go. When the countdown's done.
Sounds
Everyone,
good.
welcome to Six Elemental Interviews. Good morning, good day, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. It's about 5 p.m. here in the wonderful place that's called Canada, where I am in Canada anyways. And I'm joined by a fantastic guest. I think one of the most dynamic and interesting people that I've encountered since I've begun my Arthur journey. And that's saying a lot because I've encountered tons of dynamic and interesting people since I started my author journey. So, I mean, this is someone who you read their bio and you see that they have been a stockbroker, stock trader. They've run a peep show. They've worked in a soup kitchen. They're an author. I probably I'm not capturing even a quarter what they've done, but I'll let them tell you themselves. So, in any case, a brilliant author had an incredible time finally getting to her book after all these years since I met her, and it was absolutely phenomenal. What a great ride, literally and figuratively. So it's Thorn Coyle. How are you?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate talking with you and I appreciate your work in the world. So thanks for having me here.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so incredibly honored. I've been a fan of yours in general for a long time. I finally got to read your book, We Seek No Kings. This has been on my TBR, I want to say at least 3 or 4 years. I mean, it's a travesty that I hadn't gotten to it, but I have finally, and it was great.
Yay.
And we'll talk about
Thank
that,
you.
and hopefully I'll get to continue books in the series and read whatever you write, your other works. So I do want to get into you in general, the person you are, and what you've done. But I'm curious. I want to quickly diverge back to where we're going, which is your work, your books. What inspired the title?
So We Seek No Kings. So it's a trilogy. We seek no kings, we heed no laws, we bend no knee. So basically, I wanted a fantasy world where I could have motorcycles, swords, and dragons. And so I was like, well, it needs to be post-apocalyptic so they can have motorcycles and dragons. I don't want guns, so some technology doesn't work, but some technology does. So I figured out all this technology, and they needed to be knights, but I'm an anarchistic person, and so they're anarchist knights. So we seek no kings, right? And so the big bad in the trilogy ends up being the court Underhill, right? The elves, the fairies, right? Who are very hierarchical, very much into right. The big bad is really it's the fairy queen, the elf queen. Um, and so that's where the titles come from. It's like, no, we are going to live in community and we're going to solve our problems in community. And yes, we have individual problems. You know, the individual characters all have their own internal crisis or interpersonal crises, just like all humans do. But collectively, it's collective action that defeats their foes, right? Um, all of my books really are about community banding together. Whether it's my cozy corgi mysteries, that's still community banding together to solve the mystery, right? I don't have lone wolves. I don't have superheroes. Um, and I think there's a place in the world for those lone wolf superhero stories. They're kind of romantic, but really, what I want in the world is for all of us to come together and support each other and solve our problems collectively, right? Whether that is, you know, something rampaging through the countryside that we have to go after, whether that is a crime in our little town. You know, my Witches of Portland series is very similar. It's a coven of witches, contemporary times, urban fantasy. But again, even though each character gets their own, each coven member gets their own book, it's still the whole group. It's the coven and the larger community that bands together to combat whatever evil the witches are confronting, right? So really, it's just a reflection of me, and those titles are just a reflection of me. It's my political outlook, it's my worldview, and it's the world I want to live in.
Well, I thought it was all the titles, because I'd seen going forward in the series. You mentioned the three of them in the trilogy. I think they're all amazing titles. I'm just curious. So, do you believe that there needs to be radical change in terms of perhaps a post-apocalyptic society, dystopic world, for us to achieve what you're seeking, what you think that we can achieve? Do we
So
need that level of, you know?
I hope not. I mean, we're kind of living through an apocalypse right now, right? And I think there have been many apocalypses, if we want to use that language. They're not always, there have been a bunch of huge societal changes, right? To badly paraphrase Ursula K. Le Guin, she says, currently we live under capitalism and it seems impossible that it will ever go away. But we used to live under the divine right of kings. Humans thought that wouldn't go away either, right? There used to not be nation states. And now people are like, well, we have to have nation states. We don't know what's coming next. We're in a time of huge upheaval. As we know, it's very uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable for more people. It's uncomfortable for the larger portion of, what we might call the status quo, right? I hope we don't need a completely devastating, massive apocalypse like they lived through in my Steel Clan Saga. And you'll notice I set the Steel Clan Saga like 50 years after the apocalypse because I did not want to have to go through the die off and all the horrible things that happen, right? But so I do believe we need fundamental societal change. Yes. And I've always worked towards culture change. I've always worked towards greater social justice. But I believe that also can be built in small ways. And that's really what my books are about. How do we as individuals and as communities, with our small actions, help change the world? One of my phrases I return to all the time is do what you can, when you can, where you can, right? Because sure, my ego wants to change the world. My ego wants to save, whole species and masses of people and create systems of justice overnight. Well, that's fine, ego. You need to chill, right? It's not going to happen. What's going to happen is a bunch of small actions coupled with your small actions and your community's small actions, right? So really, those are the worlds I build. I don't want a giant apocalypse. I either want what comes after, or I want all the tiny things we can do together to change the world. And that includes writing books, right? I'm sure you experience this, that books not only change our thinking, they affect our emotions. They also are a necessary escape and a rest when the world feels too harsh and unyielding, right? So, one of the things we do as storytellers is we craft imagination, right? If we can imagine a world we want to live in, it's easier to build that world. If we can't see it, feel it, taste it, touch it, it's harder to imagine it, and therefore it's harder to craft it, it's harder to build it. So, in a way, every storyteller has the opportunity to bring about this kind of change.
Oh, wow. I love that. And I love the fact that what I got immediately out of your book, and I was somewhat cognizant of some of the themes and things you were going for pretty well off the bat, because I know you and I've watched you over the years and admired your work, etc. But that also element of, but not everything in the world is broken, and you can admire facets of our current world, our historical world.
Yes.
And it can, these two things can be true at once. Like, for example, you have knights, as you alluded to in your book. And when people think of knights, they think of, warriors married to, well, first of all, religion and to a certain code, like a chivalric code, a noble code, etc. And that isn't necessarily what your knights are about. There is definitely that conception of honor and protecting the weak and protecting, in this case,
Yes.
a society. But those other features aren't necessarily there that when we think of what traditionally a lot of people think of knights.
Yeah, they swear fealty to their community, right? They don't swear fealty to a ruler, but they do still swear fealty, right? They take vows, but their vows are to the community, and the community, of course, is very diverse, right? But that's the other thing. I love fantasy. I love epic fantasy. I'm not a fan of the romanticization of feudalism. And I think a lot of people have broken from that, especially as fantasy writers have started drawing on non-European cultures. But there's still, the roots of the genre are still in that weird romantic feudalism. And I'm like, no, I don't want that. But what are the good parts that I do enjoy, right? Swords, dragons, awesome.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. And I am going to definitely dovetail back to, because again, so many questions about this book. I absolutely loved it. So I had mentioned a bit before about some of the things you've done in your life. How did we wind up with this? From where it sounds like perhaps one of your initial careers was on a stock trading floor. Like, how did we get to here?
Okay, so it's actually continuous. I got a job on the Pacific Stock Options floor. I wasn't a trader. I quit before I became a trader because I would have had to sell my soul if I'd become a trader. I started off as a runner, just literally running pieces of paper from one place to the other. And then by the end of my tenure there, I was a personal assistant to several traders, right? I ran my own tiny business. But I specifically got a job there as a young anarchist punk. I had a blue flat top Mohawk. I had gold motorcycle boots I would wear to work every day on the floor, right? I got a job there because I wanted to learn about our economic system in a way that wasn't going to put me into student debt, right? So I decided I'll get paid to learn about the economy. What I learned, of course, was horrifying. I spent 4 years there and then I quit. So it actually is all part of the same trajectory. The stock exchange, the peep show was another study of the nexus of sex and power and culture, right? And then working full time in a soup kitchen. I worked full time in a soup kitchen for 4 years, lived for basically room and board and a tiny stipend. I ended up volunteering there for 20 years. So it's all the same trajectory, but I always wrote. I've been a writer since I was a tiny child. I've done journalism, I've written poetry, I've written essays. I had a whole nonfiction career before I finally circled back to writing fiction. So it seems strange, but that's just because I'm strange. But really, it's all part of the same trajectory for me.
Well, I think most people would say you weren't straight at all. You're just extremely talented, and you have a lot of diverse interests and a lot of diverse abilities. So I think that's what.
Well, thank you.
I think most people would say. So, okay, so you've always been writing. So then, I always say that there's perhaps a moment where, and obviously it's not linear. It's obviously different for every individual. But there's a moment when you turn from a writer to becoming an author. So when you're like, I'm going to publish this thing, some people write for years and never publish. Some people quickly after writing their first thing want to publish the thing and get out of the world. Yeah. What was that journey like for you?
So I started as a teenager. I got a job. I got an internship at my local small town newspaper. So I started in journalism, and then I dropped out of high school to go to college to study journalism. I hated high school. It was a waste of time. Dropped out of high school to go to college, wanted to be a journalist, started studying journalism and realized, oh, this profession is already going downhill. And that was decades and decades ago, before we're in the mess we're in now. I saw it coming. I saw where the money was and how the money affected the reporting. I saw that there were probably two places I would want to get a job. And I saw how my other friends were basically being sports reporters in tiny nowhere towns because they couldn't get any other work. So I quit journalism, except I did do some journalism for magazines. Decades ago, before everyone had tattoos, I was tattooed and started writing for tattoo magazines. So I did that. I always wrote poetry, and I had poetry published in a variety of journals and magazines. Tried writing fiction, but here's the problem. Since writing always came easily to me in my youth, I didn't want to learn how to write fiction. So I just decided it was too hard. I did the classic thing of labor over a short story for a year, or stall out several novels 2/3 in, right? I did all the classic writer mistakes because I didn't know how to study.
Mhm.
So I gave up fiction, turned to nonfiction. Was my first. I had three traditional publishing contracts. My first one was with Tarcher Penguin. I just got the rights back to my book Evolutionary Witchcraft, and ran a huge Kickstarter for the 20th anniversary revised edition. Um, did nonfiction, traveled and taught globally with the nonfiction. And then one day I was sitting in my living room staring out the window, and a thought entered my head that wasn't mine. It wasn't even a thought I would agree with. And I realized that's a character. So these characters came knocking on my door, and I started writing fiction again. But this time, as an adult, I had taught myself how to learn, if that makes sense. And so I started studying craft really intensively. And that was what, 12 years ago, I started back just really studying craft. I wrote that first novel, then I backed off, started studying craft intensively, wrote a bunch of short stories, and then eventually started writing novels again. So and then indie publishing, of course, was available at that time. And that was great because the traditional machine is so slow and cumbersome. And I think if indie publishing hadn't been available, I probably would not have gone back to writing fiction, right? Because I had experienced it enough with the nonfiction. And I knew I wanted to just write the stories, put the stories out there. I wanted the immediate feedback. And so I built my career, this iteration of my career, in that way. So that's the long answer to my writing history, right? I've always been a writer. And actually, since a teenager, I've always been published. It's just a matter of not publishing novels until the last decade.
Wow, what a fascinating journey. It's funny, we have that in common that I too initially wanted to take journalism in university. In high school, I had a cooperative program where I wrote for a local newspaper, and all I could write was sports as just a student. But I did well enough that they actually offered me a job working there
Wow.
on sports. But when I understood what the pay was, which was a pittance, like I couldn't survive on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I realized what the people who, some of them had graduate degrees, and how little
Yep.
they were making.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, that I love the industry sounds great, and then all the other issues you'd mentioned about, unfortunately, how political influences can potentially affect credible journalism and things like that.
Yep.
Like I got away from it, but it's just fascinating, yeah, that we have that in common. But very glad that you. Well, I mean, you're sure you would have been a great journalist, but perhaps you might not have been happy doing it. But it's just interesting as well that you were so determined to focus on craft, because clearly you had writing talent. Because yes, nonfiction, but still, you could write, and but you saw it as something so different that, first of all, you want to perfect your craft prior
Yeah.
to getting into the novelization stuff. And then second of all, that, I mean, in a way, like you had been there, you'd won the lottery, you'd been to the so-called promised land of, at the time, probably traditional publishing. And I'm sure you could easily gotten like you had an agent clearly for your traditional side. You could have easily probably gotten one for the fiction side, but yet you wanted to do something different there.
Yeah. I wanted the freedom to just do what I wanted. I wanted the freedom to just write what I want when I want it, when the characters come knocking. It's why, even though all of my work is related to fantasy, even my mysteries, excuse me, have a paranormal element, right? But even my nonfiction. So my author tagline for years has been magic is real and justice is worth fighting for. I recently added, and love always wins. Right. And so that encompasses my fiction and my nonfiction. That encompasses my poetry, my essays, my novels, my short stories, and every subgenre I want to write in. So I keep that, and that gives me the freedom. I can move within that, right? So sometimes I'm writing urban fantasy. Sometimes I'm writing more epic or post-apocalyptic fantasy. Sometimes I'm writing cozy paranormal mystery. Sometimes I'm writing nonfiction about magical practice. But it's all part of my same work. They don't feel separate to me. But yeah, to take your point, my first contract was with, as I said, Parcher Penguin, and it was a fantastic contract in that it gave me a ton of money. I got a huge advance, and I never thought I'd get those rights back, but it helped me. It helped my career. It was fantastic for me, and it helped me. I taught all over the world, from Tasmania to Brazil to France to everywhere, right? To all over to Missouri, right? To Edmonton, Canada, to BC, to Ontario, Canada, to Germany, England, right? And that was amazing and wonderful. I wrote 2 more traditional books with a slightly smaller publisher, Wiser Books. And then I burned out on the travel mostly. And it was around that time that fiction came knocking again. And I think it was no mistake. I was ready for a change. Like, all parts of me needed a change. So I was able to slowly ramp back into fiction and make that transition. And luckily, I had great mentors in the indie publishing world. And so I was able to, along with learning craft, start learning business, which you really have to do if you're going to indie publish. I mean, you really should do it if you're traditionally published as well. It's kind of a myth to think you don't have to learn business if you're traditionally published. People who don't learn business don't do that well in trad pub either. So I guess, did I answer your question?
Oh no, you did absolutely exceptionally well. And I just feel like, because of course now you're so well established as an independent author, you're someone who is a mentor to the people. People like me, we look to you for advice and guidance and direction, and you always steer us in the right direction, and you're so knowledgeable. And but it's just interesting that, and I think you garner a lot of respect for the fact that, you felt you had to work on it. You had to work on being a business person. You had to work on your craft as an author in the nonfiction side. You felt that there were goals you need to achieve, and there was perhaps a certain credibility you want to attain to be able to say you'd done X prior to doing Y. And that's really admirable. It's a lot, I really admire that. That said, though, too, there is being an independent author. I think, especially, is, in my opinion, it's and it's just my opinion, it's the tougher route because of some of the and in a lot of ways, I think perhaps the most rewarding route, but definitely I think the tougher route, especially in terms of marketing and advertising and things.
It's a lot of, I mean, unless you get a giant advance, you're not going to get much marketing support from TradPub. Most, You'll hear that, right? Um, Independent publishing is a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do it well. But I think evidence shows me it's a lot more possible to make a living than it is in traditional publishing. I Most of the traditionally published authors I know have second jobs. Now, a lot of independent authors second jobs, but I know a huge amount of independent authors that it's their only job is writing and publishing, right? So I think it is a lot of work. It takes a lot of research. The industry keeps changing. You have to keep on top of it. But you can make a modest middle class living up to, I know, seven-figure authors, right? Um, the thing that helps me most, and I think this is true if you're trad pub or indie, the thing that helps me most is invoking curiosity. I want to stay curious about books. I want to stay curious about storytelling. I want to stay curious about craft. I want to stay curious about marketing, about running my business, right? And to me, marketing is all about connecting. How do I connect with readers? How do I connect with my fans? How do I connect with people who don't know who I am yet? Right? So I remain curious about that too. And that is part of, I'm curious about the world, and that feeds into all the rest of it. So I wonder what you think. Like, do you think it's do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me that it's a lot of work, but it's also more easy to make a living? What
No,
do
I
you think about that?
totally agree with you. I'm one of those, obviously, those independent authors that certainly I have a full time job. That's my bread and butter. I've had a
Yeah.
career, but and writing is more of a hobby. But yet, I do treat it as a business very much. I mean, from early on, my wife and I decided to partner on this. I would do the writing, and she would handle the business side. I'm extremely lucky though because I have such a brilliant and
That
dynamic wife
is
that's
that is very fortunate.
who you met, who's willing to take on a
Yeah.
lot of those things and free me up to write. That said, obviously, I am involved in the business side. But the thing is, though, I feel like because my plan is when we both retire, that's going to be our full time
Yes.
endeavor,
Yes.
which is hopefully coming soon when I retire from my full time gig. But I do agree with you that I see that because I feel like the independent side, it's almost limitless what you can do, what you
Yep.
can write, when you can write it, how quickly you can produce quality books.
Yep. Yep.
Especially if the nuances of the game. I think because you're forced to pick up so much more of the business side so much more quickly when you're independent, whether
Yep.
that's downloading a file or whether that's dealing potentially with negotiating international rights if
Yeah.
that's the case, right? Like that could all be on you. Whereas in the traditional side, that would rarely ever happen. So much of what you do, you can't do without an agent, the publisher, someone else being engaged, right?
Yeah.
You talk about fighting to get your rights back for a previous book on the nonfiction side. Like it's like but as an independent author, you just do,
Yeah.
and you find your way around. So I totally do agree with you. I think you raised some excellent points that I feel that the in the future, other than there's always going to be top already established top selling authors that are going to
Yes.
make millions, and there's going to be celebrities and royals that
Yes.
are if they will demand high advance. But I think
Yes.
that they soon will be the only ones. Like there will
Yeah.
be very little below that, and everyone else will just be independent. That's where I kind of see the trajectory
Yep.
going. Could be wrong, but that's where I see the industry going.
Yeah. I mean, these days we're also seeing some highly successful independent authors broker trad deals, but it's because they have a business mind and they know what they're doing. They know what kind of contracts to negotiate, right? Whereas, like, my first contract, on one hand, it was fabulous. It got me a huge pile of money. I got a huge advance. Those advances don't even exist anymore. Like, I would have gotten a tenth of what I got 21 years ago, right? Um, but my agent sold all global rights forever.
Yeah.
So I would have foreign publishers come to me, and I'd say, sorry, you have to contact my publisher. And so most of those deals never happened. I had 2 foreign rights deals happen over 20 years with that book, whereas I could have brokered several probably on my own, right? Um, so there's a lot of that. So we are seeing some indie authors broker trad deals, but it's because of their business training. So they have better contracts and more limited contracts. They know what they're licensing, right? We still have language that's old school language about, oh, I sold a book or I sold a story. Well, no, you didn't. You licensed it. And as soon as you comprehend that you have licensed something, it changes your mindset, because then it's like, well, I can license it to a game. I can license it to merch. I can license it to a radio play, right? I can license it to Hollywood. May that happen for all us all someday, right? So it's a mindset shift that happens in learning business, and it's those larger things all the way down to the smallest thing of, do you have a newsletter? You know, I remember a long time ago, the first time I met Joanna Penn of the Creative Pen, she said, well, do you have a mailing list? This was when I was coming out of I was still trad. And I said, well, no, but I have 14,000 Facebook followers. And she just said, you need a mailing list. I still see trad authors with no mailing list. And I say to them, you really should get a mailing list to connect with your readers directly. And they're like, well, why should I do that? Right? There are whole chunks of business knowledge that are just missing. And of course, that's not true of everyone. I don't want to paint all trad authors with the same brush, because I know plenty of trad authors who are very business savvy. But you have to become business savvy to get any traction independently. That's the difference, I think. Trad, you can coast more. You may not make any money, but you can coast more. And you may end up not getting more deals because you're not making enough money. But to get any traction at all, indie, you have to learn business. And whether you learn it as a crash course over 1 year or slow over 6 years, it doesn't matter. Right. And I think, like what you're doing, I know other authors who are doing that too. It's like, this is my retirement plan. Author David Goins talks about using your day job as your patron of the arts, which I really love. And if you can think, well, when I retire, I have this backlist, and I know how to market because I've studied it. And so now this is going to, once my time is freed up, I can go all in and either replace my full-time income, or at very least have a supplemental income to my pension or Social Security or whatever it is, my retirement savings, whatever it is I'm living off of. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I think a lot is possible with indie publishing.
No, very, very well said. And you hit the nail on the head with me. Thorn, that is exactly my plan. Yeah, that's something I'm blessed to have had a government job and with a government pension, and same with my lovely wife. So, with savings investment.
And you have health care because you don't,
Yeah.
you live in Canada, not the US.
Yeah. So all those things are taken care of. And, with all the children through university and or working and having children of their own, we're in a good spot, right? So, and yes, we do have that social safety net in Canada that, but we're not unique in that. There's many countries that have that.
Yes.
There's many that don't, but
yes.
There's many that do. So but I think one of the other things that I really admire about you is that you're not just, I mean, yes, you're extremely savvy, you have a great business mind and all those things, but I think you're also someone who's really innovative the way you do things. Like, what are the things I learned from you in a short conversation about, like, Kickstarter, for example, just blew my mind, right? And so you've obviously done the hard work and the studying and the learning and had the hands-on experience to do a lot of these things, but I just think that you're very innovative the way you think.
Thank you.
the box. You think outside the box. You don't just, you're not pigeonholed into thinking one way. And I wonder how you see it, because I mentioned how I see the industry going and what's happening. Especially with things like Kickstarter, and now you have book selling companies that are doing just special editions, or special editions the bulk of their sales. You have places like Broken Binding who are dabbling in like traditional contracts, and so where do you see because I trust your opinion and your knowledge, your expertise about industry. I think you're an industry expert. Where do you see the publishing industry going, the book industry going?
That is actually a hard question, because the industry, a few years ago, friends of mine really thought the industry had stabilized, and it's clear now it hasn't, right? There's one thing that everyone talks about, the rise of direct sales. I think that came out of a couple things. It came out of the COVID lockdowns, where people got used to buying more online, right? And then with the rise of some large mega corporate bad actors, along with the rise of generative AI and other things like that, people now all of a sudden say, well, I trust you, so I'm going to buy books from you, right? Like my direct store, I don't push it that much. My sales just keep going up on my direct store, and people are getting used to that, right? And so Kickstarter is another form of direct sales, even though there is an intermediary. Kickstarter is kind of spike direct sales, whereas my store is more of an ongoing slow slope of direct sales. So I think direct sales is going to continue to be a going concern. Special editions, who knows? Everyone loves them now, but in 5 years, we don't know. One of the things I think people are loving about the special editions is, in a digital age, having a physical artifact is very important. And having something beautiful that's a luxury item, but it's a low cost luxury item. It's not a $10,000 purse. It's a $50 to $100 beautiful book, right? So relatively, sure, it's still a splurge, it's still a luxury item, but it's a very low cost luxury item. So I think that's one reason they're popular. I also think the younger generations love tangible. Like vinyl has come back. Who would have thought vinyl would come back? Gen Z is buying record players. Younger millennials are buying record players. The millennials and Gen Z people I know love physical books. I don't read novels in paper at all anymore. I read nonfiction in paper, but novels, I read so many, I read them on my e-reader, right? But that's my generation. I'm older. The other thing that's coming out that's another artifact-based thing are story letters, right? Getting a serialized story in the mail. So you open it, there's not only the story, but cool little weird artifacts in the envelope, right? And I'm looking towards, well, how can I do that? That's very intriguing to me. I love that, because the mail usually just brings garbage. It's either a bill or it goes straight into the recycle bin, right? What is it like to get something nice in the mail? So I think really what's coming in the industry is more of that kind of exploration and that kind of innovation, right? Again, it's about, who are we as humans? Who are we as storytellers? And how do we want to connect to readers? So this is less about what's coming business-wise. There's all kinds of tech we have access to now that make publishing so much easier, which I'm grateful for, right? It's so much easier to be an indie publisher now than it was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. And I think that will continue, right? I think we have some longevity in the tech space as far as publishing goes. So I don't know if any of these, like, I am not a futurist prognosticator about the industry. I just,
Oh, I'm not sure.
um, but that's what I feel. I feel, I think the technology is going to keep getting more helpful. And I think we're going to keep finding ways to connect. And I think, at least for the next, I would say probably 5 years, connection through tangible goods is going to continue. I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Wow. Well, I think those watchings will really benefit from those fabulous insights you provide there. And hey, if you can write a brilliant post-apocalyptic novel that depicts how we could turn out there, I'm pretty sure you nailed a lot of things that might happen in terms of the direction where publishing is going. So I do want to circle back again. It's like, oh my gosh, I keep thinking I could talk to you for hours. So it's like the when it comes to your belief system, your faith, witchcraft, things like that, how much of that impacts your writing, your fiction writing?
Heavily. As I said, I go back to my author tagline: magic is real, justice is worth fighting for, love always wins, right? I want a world that feels magical, and magic is about changing consciousness. Magic is about seeing what is special and sacred in the everyday. It's the raindrop on a leaf tip. It's random art in a city alleyway, right? So I always loved, even as a reader, decades ago, I started reading what we now call contemporary fantasy. At the time, it was urban fantasy. It no longer fits under that subgenre, but it was about the magic in every day. That stuff. Is there something in the corner of my eye? Like, did a magical creature just turn the corner? I don't know. Let's go follow and find out. And I love that sense of wonder. And I never want to lose that sense of wonder and connection. And it's part of my spiritual belief system, because I believe that we are all connected all the time, even when we feel our least connected, right? Even when there's horrible ruptures, right? What still connects us? And what is that sense of wonder I can find under the most difficult circumstances, to keep me going, to keep me curious, to keep me interested? So I invoke that sense of magic and wonder every day. And I do my spiritual practices of centering and breathing and connecting to nature and connecting to spirit. And that all does infuse my writing. There's one other interesting way it infuses my writing, and that is connecting with, say, spirit, which is disembodied. How different is that than connecting with my characters, right? I do not plot my books. I might have an idea, I might have a setting, I might have characters, but the characters, I kind of just follow them around. People who read my cozy mysteries say, I never know who done it. I said, that's because I don't either. Right? So it's good. You can, I'll have to get to the end and cycle back and feed some extra clues in. But usually I found my subconscious already seeded a bunch of clues. Right. So I'm just paying attention to the world around me. I'm paying attention to the characters in my story. It's a very similar feeling process for me.
Wow. And yeah, this is just so intriguing. And I guess one of the things I want to ask you this question, because what I got thinking about prior to you coming on, thinking about you coming on and who you were and what you're about, is that, there's tons of authors writing right now that have different faiths, that are spiritual, that are believers, non-believers, etc., in whatever. However, when you think about fantasy, quote unquote, common tropes, you think about witchcraft, right?
Yeah.
But yet there's very few authors, I think, probably that actually believe
Yeah.
in witchcraft as a faith, right? So
Well, yeah. And I taught it as a living, that's what I was traveling the globe. People would fly me around the world to teach magic and witchcraft.
Yeah.
I loved like sitting next to these business people who were like, "Oh, I'm on. What kind of business trip are you on?" I was like, "Well, I teach witchcraft." That was always an interesting airplane conversation.
Oh,
Sorry, I
yeah.
interrupted you. I interrupted
Oh,
you.
no, not at all. No, you didn't know that. Yeah, a great conversation starter. But yeah, so I guess in reading this, you packed a lot in a very small novel, right? A lot of amazing themes, great characters. You did a lot and that's I think the hand of that's the sign of a writer with true craft, right? But
Thank you.
one thing I noticed was that yes, like because there was quite a bit of spirituality and spiritualism that came through in this book. And I very much felt its touch when I was reading it. But I also felt like because of this book, there was so much. There was obviously, a hot and heavy romance. There was an existential threat, as you talked about. There was, a fight for survival and a lot of great, bonding between comrades and, tragedy and all kinds of things, right? But I definitely felt the spiritual aspect when I was reading the book. It was wonderful. So I like again, that's why I want to ask you about that.
Thank you.
Right? So
I'm glad that came through, including, I'm sure you noticed there was a lot of religious pluralism, right? There were many different religions and no religions among the little settlement they live in. So in what way did you feel the spirituality? Can you pinpoint anything?
tangibly, yeah, I'll say. Let me break it down to three elements. I will say first of all, and this may seem odd because I'm hopeless romantic, probably, and
Aw,
I definitely felt it in the relationship, in the main
yeah,
romance. I don't want to spoil it, but I felt that they were two people who were spiritually bonded, right?
yeah,
More than you had, and I don't want to give away. You have one character that's not sure if this kind of relationship is something that they're
yeah,
going to, but they have, and because the other character, they knew them from when they were very little, and they were already an adult, and does that kind of they felt maybe kind of creepy there, and then but yet very attracted, strongly attracted, but also to you had one character, and again, I'm trying not to, dealing with a sense of loss, right?
yeah,
And not being sure if, like, and very much feeling the spiritual almost presence of that partner on their
yes,
day-to-day activities. And
yeah,
then because one, and again, I'm just conflating characters here to avoid spoiling stuff, right? So, but obviously, use the author in order to talk about one character who is dealing with a disability. So,
yep,
and perhaps wondering if they would be as attractive because of their disability, even though they're very confident, they're very capable, and they're very, and that's one thing that the other character is drawn to, right?
yeah,
Besides their beauty, besides they're both, physically attractive, but I felt that they were fighting a very spiritual bond. Like they were fighting a very, this intangible thing that it wasn't just, of course, you had sexual, it's not heavy, but there's a lot more there. So that's one element. So the romance. I felt that with the way that yeah, I'm trying not the way that the warriors and knights confronted when they realized what the existential threat was,
yeah,
the way they approached it, like it wasn't just about swords and
right.
again, I'm trying not to spoil things. You know where I'm going. They
Yeah, well,
approached it
they have to draw on their inner power and
yeah,
their inner magic, and some of them have to find that first, right?
exactly. That's
Yeah,
where I was going. Exactly. And probably the third thing I felt in the very nature of the post-apocalyptic landscape, in that they're feeling it's not just about, you're in a place where, okay, well, is the soil going to be contaminated? Can you grow things? And you're like,
right.
I believe there was very much a sense of there was something guiding them, guiding their destiny. They very much, I think that was part of what was going
Yeah,
on. So, yeah, but again, I'm trying not to spoil because this is too good a book to spoil. But just go
thank
read
you.
it for those reasons. people and more, right? But yeah, definitely felt that in your writing. And again, I think it was rare. It's rare skill to do that with what 300? Yeah, not 400 pages. So that
Yeah.
was fabulous. So
Thanks.
really can't wait to read the next one.
Well, I'm glad the spirituality came through in all those different ways. Because, like I said, I mean, and sometimes that's conscious on my part, and sometimes it's unconscious because it's just coming through me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's part of my inner landscape. Yeah.
And that's, I think, having met you in person, you have that sense of presence that I think comes with being rooted in spirituality. And I definitely see in your writing, because your writing has a presence, right? Like a certain like gravitas, like so I think that's part of it. But I know we're running short on time, but I really wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about some of your other works, especially the Witches of Portland series. Like because that's probably, like, I'm guessing you've written the most in that series in terms of fiction, because that
Yeah,
seems very
that's my
popular.
longest. That's my longest series. It's a 9-book series that's complete, and that series came to me actually when my chronic illness was at its worst. All I could do was lie on the couch, right? I could barely move. And but the characters came to me, and so I started just scribbling notes about the characters, and then I finally started writing them. And those books, the spirituality is there, the magic is there, but there's also, and the sense of community, those things that are important to me. The thing that's amazing to me about that series, as the person who wrote it, is how timely they continue to be, right? Like, one of the books, the main big bad is immigration and customs, which we're currently fighting in the streets here in the US right now, right? My characters go up against that. And both the physical manifestation of that and the spiritual manifestation of that. My characters fight fascists in the streets. My characters fight for the rights of unhoused people. There's all kinds of social issues in each book just because that's the world my characters live in. And so, again, to go back to, I write the worlds I want to live in. I want to live in a world where community comes together to support each other and fight for each other. And that's what the Witches of Portland is all about. Yes, every book has a romance thread. Yes, every book highlights a different character, but it's always about the coven and the larger community facing down the issues in their town. Sometimes the big bad is the downtown business association that is pulling shenanigans, right? Well, a lot of people who live in a lot of different cities and towns know all about that kind of political machinations. And so I enjoyed bringing that into an urban fantasy world, right? That there are physical ramifications, mental, physical, and spiritual and metaphysical ramifications of all the things that we face in ordinary life.
Well, it sounds like the worlds that you've created are worlds that I'd be happy to live in. So let's think positive and hope that, again, we don't have to, we don't have to endure, nuclear holocaust or anything like that
Please
prior
not.
to getting there. But let's hope for a better future. And I think, like me, you're an optimist. I consider myself an optimist. So we'll get there. There may be some pain and turmoil, but we'll get there. So
As long as we're trying to take care of each other, that's the best we can do, right?
yes, absolutely, absolutely. Listen, I give you your time for hours. I'm going to respect your time. You've been so generous by coming on. This has been so amazing. I've learned so much by talking to you, as I always do whenever I talk to you. I hope you'll do me the honor of coming back, because there's so much more I want to cover with you. But again, trying to compress that into an hour, So, but this has been just wonderful, and I've treasured every minute. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on and letting me ramble about all my different things.
Oh no,
It's been a delight to talk to you.
This is awesome talking to you. Great learning experience. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to just kind of highlight where to follow you on social media, where to buy your books. Do you have a you have an online store, like just anything you'd like to highlight, whether it's a Kickstarter campaign or just take 5 minutes just to kind of talk about all the things you're doing and where you're going.
So thorncoilebooks.com is my store, and it's the best way to connect with me. You can also sign up for my newsletter there. I send out a weekly newsletter that's a short musing on life, creativity, what's happening. And then I always have a little announcement about books or Kickstarters or whatever at the bottom. It's just a brief weekly thing that a lot of people say they enjoy. That's the best way to keep track of me. But I'm on pretty much every social media platform as at Thorn Coyle. You can find me pretty much everywhere.
Okay. And the books in general, do you prefer direct people to one place or the other? I know whether that's no judging. If it's Amazon, that's obviously totally fine.
My books are on all retailers. I prefer it if you come buy them directly from me. It supports me the best, and all my ebooks are DRM free, so there's no issue with downloading it to whatever reading app you use. I also sell. I've started selling more print books on my store as well as merch. So my store is the best way, but I'm on all retailers. You can also always request my books from your library. I love it when people read my books from your library. Yay, libraries. So yeah, you can get my books wherever. And if your local bookstore or your local library don't have them yet, put in a request and they're usually happy to get them.
Okay. And you, again, you rule Kickstarters. Any Kickstarters that you can divulge and we need to be aware of that are coming up or anything?
So I'm currently running one for my Pride Street Paranormal Cozy Corgi Mysteries that ends March 13th. So people may end up missing that. It ends in a few days. Although I will have late pledges open for a couple weeks after that. If people want a cozy escape. Librarians love that series, by the way. Shout out to librarians again. And then I'll have a Kickstarter probably in May for book 2 of my contemporary retelling of the old Thomas the Rhymer Scottish ballad. It's set in contemporary times about what happens when you were dragged under hill and you came out and it was a long time later and your friends and family are gone. How do you rebuild a life after that? So I'll have the second book that explores those questions. So look for that on Kickstarter, probably around sometime in May.
Okay, fantastic. Go back that Kickstarter. And Thorn is so supportive of other authors in terms of not only advice and guidance, but also backing them on their Kickstarters. So definitely someone worth your support and your time. So
thank you.
Their books. They're awesome. So check out
that one has a different cover now. It's got 2 dragons on it.
Oh yes, so. He told me.
Yeah.
But Steel Clan Saga, definitely plan to continue.
Steel Clan Saga.
Very much looking forward to the next book in the series. So quickly for me, for shameless self-promotional stuff, this is John Saga. It's my YouTube channel. I do interviews with wonderful creatives such as Thorn on this channel, but I also with my awesome colleague Taylor from Maybe Between the Pages. We do page chewing. Check out that series. The last interview I did with Thorn was, I believe, with Taylor. And I think Steve. I can't remember.
It was.
It
was definitely on page chewing. It was fun.
Yeah. So check that out. It was a blast, of course. Speaking with Thorn. The books, the Drowned King Saga. 5 books out now. 6th book, A Black Dragon on Red. Thank you, coming out in the next month or 2. We'll have more definitive timeline soon. And of course, that's book 6, the series 7 books. So we're almost there. So yeah, and thank you, Thorn. It's a great feeling of confidence. I'm getting there. Also, my short story, Forest Dark, a little bit of fantasy horror. If you want to check out what my writing might be like, check out the Shapers of World Anthology 5. It's a great anthology, amazing collection of authors there. But yeah, my first foray into fantasy horror, and it is part of my main universe, so connected to the Drowned King Saga. So I encourage anybody to check it out if you'd like a read. Thorn, if you want a great anthology, you want an arc, be happy to send you an arc.
Awesome,
brilliant stories in there. Don't just read from mine, but there's some brilliant. So if you're interested in an arc, I'll definitely send you one. And yeah, other than that, everything in terms of social media is PL Sturt Writes, Facebook, Twitter/X, whatever you call it, Blue Sky, Instagram, and website peelstore.com. I'm also an assistant editor with Before We Go blog, and of course now a contributor with Grimdark Magazine. Very humbled to be part of all the things that I'm involved in the community. But the best part, certainly near the top of the pyramid, is getting to sit down with creatives like Thorn and do my little part just to help shine light on amazing people and give back, because I've gotten so much out of this community. So
awesome.
Once again, this is Thorn Coyle and I signing off. Go check out all her books. We Seek New Kings was brilliant, and I plan to read a lot more from her. Hopefully I'll have a little shelf going for just my Thorn Coyle collection at some point. So when I get there.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks everyone.
And we'll see you later. Bye-bye now.